What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the Vanguard Beta is right around the corner, and I was fortunate enough to be invited out to a capture session last week. I was able to play the game for about 2.5 hours or so and capture gameplay. Big thanks to Activision for inviting me out to that, by the way. And in this video, I wanted to share all of my initial thoughts and impressions after this gameplay session. Now, before we get into this, there's a few things that I have to go through. First up, this is a beta build of the game, and I only got to play for about 2.5 hours, so I've only had a taste of this game at this point. I don't know every single detail, I don't know all the ins and outs, and therefore my impressions are based on this very limited play sessions. I'm sure I'll be able to flesh them out a lot more as the beta weekend goes on, and as I have a lot more time to grind the game. Additionally, with this capture session, obviously there was no matchmaking, so I can't judge the game's skill-based matchmaking or engagement-optimized matchmaking, or I don't know if it has disbanding lobbies. I can't judge any of that, and also I was generally playing against other content creators and professional players that are also going out there and actively trying to get gameplay. And therefore I'm judging the game based on how it played against players like that are also running around and pushing and trying to get gameplay themselves. Although in the gameplay you're watching in the background, this is actually my very first game ever playing Vanguard 6v6. For some reason, I think I ended up more in a media lobby because I didn't recognize too many of the names on the other team, and also they clearly aren't professional players. But in either case, I also wanted to just remind you guys that I always share my honest opinions, regardless of the fact that I got invited out to play this game early. If you guys remember back to Modern Warfare 2019, I got flown out to LA to play that game early, and my impression was pretty negative after that. I straight up said that I didn't like playing 6v6 in that game, and I stand behind that today. So these are my 100% honest opinions and impressions here. And straight up, I think this is going to be a very good year of Call of Duty, at least for me, my playstyle, and what I look for in a Call of Duty game. I was worried this was going to end up being sort of like a Modern Warfare clone and they were going to copy too many elements from that game, but the overall pacing and flow felt nothing like Modern Warfare 2019. There are a lot of good elements that it took from Modern Warfare, but I was very pleasantly surprised to see that this seems to play more like a traditional Call of Duty game. The gunplay and the character movement is very modernized. That feels like Modern Warfare, which is a great thing because that's an area where I feel they really did a great job with. However, the way that the maps are designed, the way that things just had a tendency to flow, the way that the spawns had a tendency to work, it felt very much like a traditional Call of Duty game. And that really excites me, and this is why I do feel this is going to be a great year of Call of Duty. So let's get into a list of a lot of the things that I noticed that I really liked about this, and then we'll get into the things that I wasn't a big fan of, or maybe I just have some concerns about at this point. And as always, keep in mind, the good things is probably going to be a shorter section because it doesn't take that long to explain that I like something, whereas it takes more time to explain why I didn't like something. But let's talk about the improvements from the alpha build of the game. The first thing is the visibility is way better than the alpha. This could have been mainly due to the lighting on the maps that we played compared to the Champion Hill maps, but also like the visibility when you're hurt, that has been massively improved. You're no longer like completely blinded when you get hurt, and that's great to see. Even when firing your gun as well, it seems like they toned down muzzle flash or something because I can actually see my target when I'm shooting at them most of the time at least, unless they're really, really far away. And I didn't feel like I was just shooting below enemy name tags and not actually seeing their character model, which I did feel like I was doing in the alpha build. Additionally, when it comes to visibility, there is a depth of field setting, which you can turn depth of field on and off, which is another thing that massively improves the visibility in the game. So a couple of my biggest complaints there from the alpha were absolutely addressed for this beta build. Next up, the minimap look is completely different from the alpha. And I'm not talking about the dot interaction or anything. I'm just talking about the look. They have more of a classic look to the minimap, so you can see all the structures and everything. The alpha minimap was in a very unfinished state, so again, that's a huge improvement. I love what I'm seeing there. And now let's talk a little bit about footstep audio. This is something that I despised in Modern Warfare 2019, and I'm happy to report, at least in the build that we played, default footstep sounds were very quiet, and I never felt punished for rushing around, for moving, for trying to flank enemies. I never felt punished for that due to footstep audio. Additionally, with the map design that we saw, generally I liked what I was seeing. This is nothing like Modern Warfare 2019 maps. I would take any one of these beta maps over most of the Modern Warfare maps, which is great. There's also great variety in the setting, the color palettes, the layouts of the maps. And that's excellent to see. I will say I wasn't a massive fan of Eagle's Nest, but like the map that we're playing in the background right now, I believe this one's called Gavutu. I really like the layout of this map. It played very, very well. And overall, I'm not too worried about the general map design, assuming the rest of the maps are going to at least generally follow suit with this design philosophy. Next up, let's talk a little bit more about the minimap. It turns out, by default, the minimap style is Modern Warfare style, and what that means is if an enemy fires an unsuppressed gun and your team doesn't have a UAV in the air, you won't see a dot appear on the minimap. However, they have included the classic dot interaction as a perk. In the tier 2 section for perks, we have a perk called Radar, and this makes it so anybody that's not using the subsonic attachment on their gun will be appearing on the minimap as a diamond or dot. And therefore, I do like the fact that we at least have the ability to have that classic minimap if we choose with a perk. Now, obviously, I'd still prefer it if this was just the default setting for everybody and no perk was required, but at the very least, I like that we have the option for that. Next up, the new game mode that we had access to. This is called Patrol, and it's the one you're seeing in the background, and it's kind of like a hard point, but it slowly moves around the map. It's one capture point that just moves around the map, and it is a predictable path, and basically you just stand on that point to gain points for your team. And then both teams are just fighting over that and fighting over the spawns that are going to be most beneficial in the future for that. So a lot of times you want to try and get ahead of that point and cut it off. And I really like the dynamic gameplay that this brought. I had a lot of fun playing this mode. And I do see myself playing this a decent amount in the future when this game actually launches. Next up, a little feature that goes a long way that I noticed. Keep in mind, I'm playing on console here. You might notice on the top left of the screen, my real-time latency and packet loss is displayed there. This is something you have to turn on in the menus, but you have the ability to turn this on. And I'm so happy to see this, because traditionally this is just something you had access to for PC, and on console you have to like press start and tab over in order to see what your latency is. Not in the beta build of this game. You can put that right up on your screen, and I love that. But finally, on my list of things that I noticed that are unique that I really like in this game, this is the fact that we have our different combat pacing options. And I'll admit, I don't know every single detail of how this works at this point, but basically, you have the traditional 6v6 option. I think they call it tactical, even though it doesn't play like Modern Warfare style tactical gameplay. It is normal Call of Duty 6v6, and that's what it plays like. But the big thing is, toward the end of the gaming session, we played Blitz. And Blitz is like traditional Call of Duty ground war. So you play it on the regular maps, and you just have a much higher player count. And I think it scales based on the map. I could be wrong on that, but I think we were playing 20 versus 20 at one point. And it was super chaotic, especially with content creators and pro players mixed in there. It was super crazy and chaotic, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I think pub stompers are going to love this. So there we go. Those are some of the good points that I noticed about this, but in general, like I said, the overall flow and pacing of the game really felt like traditional Call of Duty, which is probably the most important good thing to get out of this video. Now let's talk about some of the things I either didn't like or I just have some concerns about. Maybe I need some more playtime with in order to properly judge this. The first thing is very unfortunate. There is still no FOV slider for console, and I checked the PS5 version as well as the PS4 version. There was no FOV slider in the build that we had access to. I'm still holding out some hope that we'll see it for launch, but it's still not there in the beta. Next, something that I noticed that did carry over from the alpha that I didn't like. This is the fact that third-person gunfire audio, so gunfire from other people, not from myself, it seemed really difficult to pinpoint where that was coming from based on the sound. So sometimes it seemed like gunshots that were farther away were louder than gunshots that were closer to me, even when the person that was closer to me firing the gun wasn't using a suppressor. So it's kind of confusing. It's hard to pinpoint where that gunfire is coming from sometimes. And I do feel like the audio in that area could still use some adjustment and fine-tuning. Additionally, and this is more of a preference thing, I was a little bit bummed out to see kill streaks instead of score streaks. And I'm not talking about Cold War score streaks, I mean traditional Black Ops 2 style score streaks. That's my preference because it encourages and rewards objective play. And at least in the build that we played, all we had access to are regular kill streaks. So who knows, maybe there will be a perk like Point Man from Modern Warfare where we will be able to choose score streaks if we want. I'm hoping that's going to be the case. In either case, I'm still happy to see traditional kill streaks compared to Cold War's score streak system, because I hated that system. But yeah, relatively minor complaint, but if it were up to me, I would much rather see like Black Ops 2 style score streaks return. Additionally, while playing, I did notice on a couple of the maps, there were a couple of areas that were a bit rough in the spawn trap department. Specifically on Gavutu Domination, there does seem to be an advantage to the C side of the map, and it does seem a little bit easy at this point to spawn trap people that spawn at A. And then also on Red Star, which is the snowy map, There is a spawn that's like down low in a bunker, and that can also be a bit of a brutal spawn trap. At least in this area, it's nice to know that spawns generally change from the beta build of the game, and they get a lot of spawn data there, and they're able to make adjustments for the full build, so I hope some adjustments are made there. Additionally, a fairly minor complaint here, the glide bomb behaves just like in COD World War II, and I'm not a big fan of that because the way that the camera angle is in relation to the glide bomb, it can sometimes make it difficult to really place that in a pinpoint location, like right where you want it to be. And I did find that to be just a little bit of an annoyance. But now let's move on to just a couple concerns I have, where I didn't really notice a huge issue while playing in this short play session, but I'm still a bit worried about for the future. And the first thing is the fact that we have Dead Silence as a field upgrade. And yet, like I said earlier, I didn't feel like I had any issue rushing around freely. I didn't feel like people were hearing my footsteps by default, so I don't feel there's a need at all for the Dead Silence field upgrade. And the reason I'm concerned about that is I feel like the devs might be looking and seeing that nobody's using the Dead Silence field upgrade, and therefore, in order to encourage the usage, they're going to bump up the default footstep audio. And if they were to do that, that could potentially destroy this game for me. I'm somebody that loves to be aggressive, I'm somebody that loves to flank, and I really don't want to feel punished for doing that if I don't have a field upgrade charged at that given point. I don't want my preferred playstyle to be limited to short spurts every time I get a Dead Silence charged up. So in the game's current state, not an issue, it's just something that I'm very concerned may change in the future. But finally, another concern that I still have, and I have been expressing this concern a little bit already, this is the fact that we can have 10 attachments on our gun at any given time. I didn't notice any significant issues while we were playing in this short play session, but people weren't really maxing out the guns and trying out every single attachment combination out there. I'm a bit concerned that once people have the time to put into that and figure out all the best attachment combinations and everything, I'm worried that it's just going to be difficult for the devs to keep things in balance when people have 10 attachments on their gun at once. I'm hoping I'm wrong on this. I'm hoping they do a great job and this won't be an issue at all. And in fact, I'm going to end up loving it because there's so much customization available. But I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't concerned that there could potentially be some issues that come out of this. But with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on my first impressions based on this limited play session. Like I said, my opinions are going to be much more fleshed out once we get our hands on the beta and I get to just grind it hard for a full weekend or even multiple weekends. So I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on other things that I find, whether that be things that I like or dislike about the game. But overall, I have very few complaints, and the complaints that I do have are generally minor at this point. So I'm really feeling good about this year of Call of Duty, and I just can't wait to get my hands back on this so I can keep grinding it out. Now, of course, I am curious to hear from you guys, based on what you've seen so far from me, or maybe some other content creators out there, just watching the gameplay, listening to our impressions. What are you guys thinking about Vanguard so far? Are you generally optimistic about this, or not so much? Do you feel like this is a game you're not going to be into? Just let me know your thoughts and why down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.